We are live now.
We are Facebook Live. So now time to share.
Yep, I'm with you.
What's
there.
up, Facebook Live?
Oh, I have to do that myself. This is the part of the program we like to refer to as Smoking and Toasting versus the Internet.
Yeah. So true.
You would think we've done this enough times to actually know how to do it.
Hey, I did it on the first try.
I think I might have beat you to it there, buddy.
Wow.
You guys.
I'm impressed with myself.
I have quite the day in front of
It
us.
says
All
we're
right.
live.
Let's see here.
Facebook Live, what's up? We are excited about this is show number 80, by the way. 80.
That's a
Can
lot
you
of
believe
shows.
this show has survived 80 shows?
80
So,
shows.
I
What are
want
you going to
you-
do for the big 100?
I don't know. Honestly, I think we may go to a location and invite everybody. Like everybody who's ever
That would
been
be
on
a
the
blast.
show and see who can make it.
You should make it like Survivor and have process of elimination
Yeah,
during the
people get-
podcast.
people
People
get
get
voted-
kicked off the island, voted off the podcast.
People get voted out of the lounge.
Voted
Yes.
out of the lounge.
I love this
Oh
idea.
my gosh.
So, Adam's like, you can't vote me out because who's gonna run the Wheels of Steel?
I'll let you share this. Right
All right.
post.
I love this idea, by the way. This 100th show. We got to think about that. I need to plot out on.
You really need to plan it out. I bet you can
I need
do
to
it.
plot.
I think it's
yeah.
brilliant. I think it's
There's a
great.
great podcast called Doug Loves Movies, and he does every year at Christmas. He does like the 12 guests of Christmas, and it's 12 guests from the past year's worth of shows.
And do they all come to the same show?
Same show,
Yeah,
and they
that's great.
compete. The whole show is basically a game show on a podcast.
And they
So
compete to see who can be there.
It's
at the
all
last-
movie trivia.
That's great.
So these 12 people get eliminated until you've got an overall winner.
all right, kids, we ready?
Yep.
Let's do this thing.
Shared. Nobody noticed I'm drinking this great craft beer. Actually, they're not craft.
This is craft beer.
Are they? I thought they were disqualified.
Nope, they are not disqualified. They are still craft.
I don't know. I feel 21 again.
They
Shiner.
are still owned. They are still independently owned.
There was a store in the town next to where I grew up. It was the only place you could get other than the macro brews, and they had Shiner. So we used to go to this one particular little gas station.
We've had the brewmaster from Shiner on.
I heard.
Jimmy Mark
freaking
is
hilarious.
so funny.
Yeah.
He's like, when you're going to sit down and drink 16 or 18 beers.
You want something light enough to make it through. Yeah. No.
My only problem with that is I kind of prefer the heavier ABV beers
Yeah,
because
I do too,
I don't
yeah.
have room in my stomach for 15
For
beers.
16 or 8, yeah. Well, there was,
That makes you a sprinter, not a marathon runner.
well, and this is how you know you're
There's
actually
a joke there. I'm gonna skip.
past college, is it becomes about quality instead of quantity.
Yeah.
No, it was Cuervo Gold when I was in college, baby.
that means you got a job.
There was a lot of
Right.
college math done at that time where you're trying to figure out, can I justify spending, like, Spindle Tap does the Houston Haze. It's $20 for 4 beers.
Right.
No college student can do that math.
Right. Exactly.
$20 will get me 2 cases of that.
Of Natty Light.
It'll buy you over 30 Rolling Rocks right now. I think actually the 30 pack of Rolling Rock I saw at my HEB is like $18 or something, or $20 or
So,
something ridiculous.
quick story, and I know I'm delaying the start, but quick story, I'm in Specs. I was picking out one beer we needed for the show and getting stuff for the music meeting. And so I've got the cart kind of loaded down with stuff, and these two guys come over and they're having this conversation. But yeah, I don't really get all this other beer. Here's my area. Here's the Bud Light and the Keystone Light. And I wanted to stage an intervention. I did.
Yeah.
Like, but you can't do that to people. That's
Well, you can and you should. It happens in the whiskey world
but
all
isn't
the time.
that being a beer snob though? Like
Yeah,
when you
it depends
you should
on
let
how-
people drink what they want to drink.
It depends on how you approach it. So we and I can't. I hope I'm not the only one who's. I hope it's not just me that's done this, but at Specs. Go ahead.
It's easier when you're at a bar because you can go, let me buy you a beer.
Isn't there a
Sure.
joke about that, like in a canoe and
Yeah. So at Specs, you find, unfortunately, you do find, not necessarily just Specs, but at some big box stores, you find salespeople
Right.
pushing certain products.
Right.
There's an incentive there, and it's
Of course,
not always
yeah.
the best thing.
Right.
So if you're standing within earshot of this, the whiskey guy in me just will slowly find myself being pulled in that direction, and then as soon as I find my
that at that price,
as soon as I find my entrance, I'm like, hey man, don't do that. It's just there's a lot of really great whiskey out there. I mean, like we said before the show started, there's a lot of great $25 bourbons out there that are just phenomenal. Yeah, and that'll appeal to that college student.
That's a show, by the way. Let's remember that for the future.
Great
$25 bourbons. Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's rock it. You ready?
Let's do it.
Plastic bottle special.
Let's do it.
Well.
It gets better every week.
Welcome, my friends, to this fine radio program. Yeah, it's going to be ridiculous by the time we get to the end of the year. Welcome to Smoking and Toasting, the show that's all about craft beer, fine spirits, and hand-rolled cigars. Guess what? It's our 80th show.
That's pretty impressive.
I think we should celebrate with some whiskey and some really good craft beers. What do you think?
I think this is a good idea.
I think it's a great idea. So welcome, and welcome to... he's easily, he's easily our favorite guest, and I say this with the appropriate apologies to Jeremiah Butler.
Yes,
who is certainly in the running for being favorite guest, but Jeremiah, it's been too long since you've been on the show, and I say this with love, my friend, my brother. You need to be be on the show.
If you can't be with the one you love,
then we're going to love Kris Hart, because Kris Hart is here from the Houston Whiskey Social and the Houston Bourbon Society, and you had lots of stuff to talk about. We're very excited about it, and of course you brought some goodies, which you always do. And that's very exciting as well.
Yeah.
So how have you been, first of all?
Well, let me just back up a second. I've never felt so appreciated and both settled on in the same breath. See, I feel like you're my wife.
It's a talent.
It's a backhanded wonderfulness that we like to spread around.
It's a talent that we share.
I have a great time every time we're on the show, and you guys have definitely inspired a lot. But I've been good. We've got the Whiskey Social ramping up this year.
Yeah, we want to talk about that.
We'll talk about it. Set for July. We actually pushed it back for a few reasons. We could talk about that as well. Okay. But it's just been an insanely busy spring. What's that old account? Tax season?
Yes.
Although it's literally tax season, it's also the busiest time of year for me. So I just as soon as I leave here today, I'm hitting the ground running and going to con run back. So it's,
okay. So you're going to tell us about that too?
Yeah.
I happen to know what you're talking about.
Yeah. There's a lot of really exciting things happening.
Very exciting. So we want to talk about that. My name is Cruze. No,
I heard a little birdie.
Yeah, I whispered a little
sweet nothings.
So. Yeah. My name is Cruze. My co-host is Ian Barry. Adam Andrus is on the Wheels of Steel, and our special guest is Kris Hart. It is Whiskey Social time, and this is show number 80. We are brought to you by our good friends at B&B Butchers and Restaurant. They are located at 1814 Washington Ave in Houston, and in the shops at Clear Fork in Fort Worth. And wow, we got a great. The show's going to be jam-packed, and we're going to start drinking early. A lot of times we wait until segment 2 to start drinking. That may not be the case today. So we're going to get to that shortly. But first, Ian, I must ask you, as I so enjoy doing in this segment every week, smoke anything interesting lately?
Yes.
Oh, the NPR lean is back. I knew you were
You're going to love this. Okay?
I knew you were going to pull it back.
Here's what I'm going to talk about
cigar?
this week. Yes, you're going to love this because I showed up. I have a buddy of mine that lives just a couple blocks from me.
Yeah.
And he gets off work. A lot of times he doesn't get off work until late. So I usually don't even see him until like 10 o'clock if I go hang out or later, And so I show up.
Does he show up at your house like at 11:15 at night? Hey, dude.
No, but he does just randomly text me. He just, like, come on out and hang. So I show up at his house, and I always bring a couple cigars. He's got this great little back patio, Sometimes we'll play poker. We'll just goof around and watch movies. He's way into, like, films and stuff, so we'll speak about how awesome Conan is and other things.
I love when you say way into films, and then the one you mentioned is Conan.
It's a brilliant movie.
I love that.
Brilliant movie.
It's like 85 or something. It's
yeah,
quite a ways back.
You'd have to meet my friend Scotty. He's a hell of a thing. So, anyways, I show up over there, and I always bring a couple cigars because he's got this nice little closed-in patio.
Yeah.
And it's got the TV and the poker table and all that stuff. And when I show up, sitting at my chair there is a Black and Mild.
Now, see, I saw you post this on the internet.
I did.
On a photo of this on Facebook.
I did. a Black and Mild.
Yep. And you had a beer and what looked like
And
a
he
whiskey.
gave it to me as a joke.
Right. And you smoked it.
And hell yeah, I smoked it.
And so you're reviewing the Black and Mild
So
today.
I am reviewing a Black and Mild today.
All right.
Okay.
I showed my wife. I go, did someone hijack Ian's Facebook account? Like, what is this about? But no, the whiskey
What's
looked
funny
good.
is I was about a third of the way through this cigar when he finally turned and looked at me and goes, "Oh, I wasn't actually expecting you to smoke it."
So, what did you think?
This is what we're starting to show off.
Yeah.
You look a little speechless.
I'm processing everything that's being said right now. You smoked the black. You remind me of this guy I know, Evans, who it looks like he's watching. I'll be reprimanding you in a minute too. But a black. So go, please continue.
Yeah,
I'm
please.
excited.
We are excited to hear this.
So, I don't think I've ever actually smoked a Black and Mild.
Yeah?
A Swisher Sweet years ago,
Yes.
and a couple of other various machine-made ones, but I don't think I've ever smoked Black and Mild. Now, this is the one that comes, it's a little cell
It's got
flame
the
around,
filter tip,
and it's
right?
got the
Machine-made.
little tip on it. Yeah, a little cheap plastic tip on it. Which, by the way, is a truly annoying feature on a cigar.
Yes.
It depends on who you are.
But I owned it. I
As-
said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and do this.
I'm not surprised.
And I lit this cigar. And the room note on this cigar
It's
is
incredible.
actually fantastic.
It's incredible.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, so if I'm not mistaken, they use Cavendish pipe tobacco.
Right. It's basically a pipe in a stick.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah.
So you probably really enjoyed this.
Which, by the way, that tip is a pipe tip. It's like if you were to smoke a pipe, that's what
Yeah.
the
It's
beveling.
good, it's kinda
Except
like
for
the
it's
little-
smaller and it's really cheap plastic.
Of course, of
Right.
course, of course.
Incredibly cheap
Yeah,
plastic.
no excuse, but yeah, it
But
smells
yes, no,
incredible.
No, I'm picking up what you're laying down. So anyway, I lit this thing and I was actually expecting, to smoke about half of it and dash it out and be like, that was fun, and then light a real cigar,
Right.
I smoked the whole thing.
Okay.
I had to take the label off it.
Wow.
Smoked the whole thing. It was delicious. In only a way that a 60-cent cigar,
Can be.
by the way, if you buy them on like JR Cigars or something like
They're
that,
cheaper than that.
it's $15 for 25 of them. Okay, that makes it about a 60-cent cigar if you buy it
Yeah.
like that. Now, if you buy it in bigger bulk, I'm sure you can get them less.
Yep.
But let's go ahead and say that that's a 60-cent cigar, or maybe $1 at the actual store. Okay, we could put it there. My amount of enjoyment that I got out of this, and this literally smoked, it tastes like pipe tobacco. It tastes like an oak, not a great pipe tobacco, but an
Right.
okay pipe tobacco.
You know what this means, right?
Yeah.
What you're getting to.
This is off the charts on a price versus quality.
There it is.
Right. Yes.
It's got to.
So-
It's got to be your best rating yet.
So P to Q.
So P to Q. Okay, so let me just talk about this. This Cavendish, this beautiful vanilla deliciousness that was going on. The room note was fantastic. Everyone in the room commented on how
Was
good that thing
enjoying
smelled.
your Black and Mild.
Yes, everyone in the room commented. So I had a great time with it. Now, was it a fantastic cigar? Not really. It was okay, but it was fun. It was interesting. It was different.
Right.
Price to quality.
Because we're
A
talking
60
cent cigar.
Cigar. Price to quality's got to put it at 8,
No, well,
maybe 9.
it's got to be a perfect score. The way you're sounding to me, it sounds like this is the highest rated.
It's the highest P to Q rating I think I've ever heard you give.
Less
It
than
is.
less than
In a
$1,
cigar.
and the way that you're literally
I had
glowing about
so
it. This
much
sounds like
fun
your
about
first
it.
date, the first time you meet a woman. Like you're talking. It's not bad pipe tobacco. It smells phenomenal.
Yeah,
How can you not give it a perfect score?
because
for price
it's
to
not a
value?
good cigar.
Right.
Fair enough. All right, so
Right.
9.9.
Right, so it's not a good cigar. It actually is just more pipe tobacco than a cigar, but it was enjoyable. I enjoyed it all the way down to where, well, it wasn't going to burn my fingers because it had a little plastic tip on it, but I enjoyed it until it actually started getting a little bitter at the very end, and I put it out, and my friends were laughing at me because I was like, you know what? This was fun. This was all right. I'll probably buy some for, mowing the lawn.
Wow. You're right.
And forgive me for being snobby, I never would have tried one if it wasn't for the circumstance.
Well, I just want you to know that I agree with everything you're saying. And yet at the same time, I marvel at how the universe has a way of balancing things. Because the cigar I want to talk about this week was an $11 cigar. So if we
that's-
take your 60-cent cigar and my
60 cent.
$11 cigar and average them, we're in the $5 to $6 cigar range.
But we also might need to come up with a new, sub lawnmower level. of cigar for that.
I think this definitely calls for a new scale, because it's kind of like when they give awards for movies, there's the comedy section,
Right.
and the serious section, which I guess can literally translate to cigars. You've got your serious section and definitely your comedy section of smoking. But it's a different category altogether. While still,
By the way, the serious section is actually now referred to as the Casa de Monte
Oh,
Cristo
yeah, there's that.
section. So
Well played.
because they've been purchased. So, but no, you're right, and I feel actually, I have never felt like such a cigar snob as I will feel now telling you about my $11 cigar.
Please
after
tell us
Ian
about
has
your
extolled the
premium
virtues.
hand-rolled cigar.
Yes. Well, so I rolled up in my Bentley, and
Hilarious.
And when your driver let you out,
the cigar that I smoked this week is called the Wise Man. It's a Maduro, and it's made by the Foundation Cigar Company. Nicholas Melillo is the president and founder of Foundation Cigar Company. He was a master blender for Drew Estate for many years, and kind of left and kind of started his own
there's a little
thing.
bit of street cred there.
He says this cigar is a tribute to Nicaragua, its culture, people, land, and the bridge between old world traditions and the new. By the way, if I wasn't the snobbier guy on the show at this point, I would have just said Nicaragua.
I don't
But
think
because
my
I am,
cigar
I said
was
Nicaragua.
made in Nicaragua.
I don't think it was. I think it was made in Atlanta. An absolutely beautiful cigar. Not as beautiful as a Black and Mild, but beautiful in its own way. And I've had a few of those. Honestly, I bought this one for its looks. I bought it in the humidor at Specs. Box press, not too dark, but nice and smooth.
label looks or overall look?
Everything. The label, just the overall look of the cigar was just absolutely gorgeous. Gorgeous cigar. It had a San Andreas Maduro wrapper, Nicaraguan binder and fillers. The pre-light was chocolate and earth. I feel like such a snob looking at my notes here after hearing about...
Like, it didn't even have a tip? Are you
Yeah, it
kidding
didn't
me?
even...
No, actually, what that really was my cigar had no subtleties about it at all.
Yeah.
And there was no development of flavor except for it got bitter at the very end.
Well, this one got, like, pepper about an inch in. Halfway point, the creamier flavors were totally replaced by the pepper. But there were notes of earth and leather that started coming through. And then the last third, honestly, was as good as any cigar I've had in a while. The last third of this thing. I mean, the first 2/3 were good. The last third was, like, amazing. And so that's kind of interesting for me because I'm not necessarily one of those guys that notices, like, these huge differences in a cigar as it smokes. But in this case, I was able to detect that a little more.
And I could be wrong, but I think that last third is usually on the
It's
downslope.
In many
Yeah.
cigars, it is because it's burning hotter, because it's
Right.
there's less.
And
of it
it's got a
left,
collection of saliva.
So very complex in the
Oils.
last third, with the pepper easing back a little bit to mingle with the other flavors. It did start out medium bodied, was full by the time I got to the nub that I laid in the ashtray. $10 or $11 cigar, I would say worth every penny. I honestly would not have been disappointed if this had been a $15 cigar. It was fantastic. But I'm so glad that it wasn't, especially because then I would really feel like a snob. Price to quality, I'm just going to say I'd give the baby a 6. So, certainly not the, what did you do, 8 for the Black and Mild?
For the enjoyment that I got out of that cigar, it was an 8.
Price to quality, my friend.
At 60 cents.
Just think about it. At 60 cents, you could have like a dozen of those for what this one cigar cost me.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's why I really feel like it's a near perfect score, but I feel like you feel dirty. You feel almost shameful giving it a better score than an 8.
There's some filth you can't wash off.
Yes, that's absolutely right.
Like he cried after. He just he took a shower and he's just
That's the Black and Mild. Yeah, I've been on dates like that, but that was when I was young and impulsive. Okay, so we didn't get to any whiskey in the first segment because the Black and Mild really threw us like into a whole different level of discussion. But I'm thrilled that you did that. Next week I'll be smoking a Swisher Sweet, and Ian will probably have the Opus
Philly
X
blonde.
or exactly.
Oh, no, the Opus X would be fine.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. Chris is going to select some whiskey for us to try, and we'll be trying a beer as well. We've got some really interesting beers on the show. Plus, cigar sales are up and cigar sales are down. I'll tell you about that coming up on the show. And the 9 types, I thought Chris would enjoy this on the show, the 9 types of of craft beer drinkers that'll drive you a little nuts. We'll get to
I
all
bet
of
most of that applies to
Yeah.
whiskey as well.
Yeah, we'll get to all that on the show. This is Smoking and Toasting. We'll be right back.
I couldn't tell you how ecstatic I was knowing that you were about to give it a great score. Like,
You knew it was going to happen.
as you started talking, I thought, oh my God, he's about to give this shit a perfect score. I gotta go get that beer out before it freezes.
You know, it wasn't a good cigar, but it was a fun cigar, and I enjoyed it.
I totally relate to what you're talking about. That's why I love those.
And I was totally not expecting it either.
Those JR alternatives that I get that are $2, $2 and $2.20 or whatever they are. I mean, they're not a great cigar, but boy, are they a good cigar for $2. You know.
So about, I guess a couple years ago, Cigars International came out with Cuba Libre.
Yep,
Yes.
Yep.
And they were these little 4-inch, like just really tiny, basically yard guards, and they were $1 a piece. And
nice.
price to value,
Oh,
unbeatable.
Yep. And see, I like, and they haven't been on sale recently, but I love the Nica Libres, especially in the smaller sizes or the Obsidians.
Gene wants to know what's behind the Lagavulin and the Old Forester birthday bourbon. So there's two things, Gene. Of course, I don't know when exactly you commented, but let me see. So there's the Glendronach 21 and the Kentucky Owl Rye, which I know you have had many, many pours of, Gene. And we've got a bottle of Maple Shade that I know that if I open right now, it would definitely freeze instantly. So I'm giving it a minute to calm down.
We'll do that actually in a later.
I have the 18 at my house.
It's solid. I mean, you can't go wrong with sherried single malts.
Yeah,
Whether
I
you're a
agree
big
with that.
beer drinker or you're a big whiskey drinker, bourbon or scotch, sherry is
Yes.
solid.
So I'm going to wait on the. We were going to do the Celis Pale Bock. I'll wait on that one because I want to try this IPA. So, all right, ready to rock?
Yeah.
Segment numero dos.
All right.
As they
Speaking
say,
of which,
I'm down like 4 flat
I do want to
tires.
mention one more thing about cigars once we get on the
Okay.
air.
All right.
About one of a mutual friend of ours and a new release that just came out that's worth visiting. I'd like for you guys to
I'd love to.
experience. You don't have to necessarily review it on air, but I had one back when there had only been about 20 people in the U.S. who had smoked it, and it was worth visiting.
Cool.
The only thing I don't know is I don't know what the retail price is. But I will get you a stick. Have you guys ever done reviews without knowing the price?
No, but
we can.
If I can get you some sticks and you guys give a blind review,
and then you can text us the price.
yeah, and then you
Yeah.
could just lower
We'll
that
do our review. And you
lower that price to quality index
Oh,
down
yeah.
quite a bit.
All right. All right, ready to rock.
Man, that beer looks good. I really can't wait to drink it with you.
Love nice
13 or
frosty
14%,
beers.
I think.
Welcome back. It's Smoking and Toasting, and we are so thrilled to have you listening to the show number 80. There are the drums that got us into a discussion about drums on the show and drum sound, and that has continued on my Facebook page as I posted a photo of John Bonham and you know my assertion that he is the greatest rock and roll drummer ever, and then there's been lots of fun discussions. But what I loved, by the way, is several people piped up and go, "Yeah, I heard you say that on the show," and so that made me feel like maybe it wasn't a whole wasted segment that we talked about drums.
John Bonham is one of the few drummers where when you hear John Bonham, you just know
You
it's
kind
John
of know,
Bonham.
and that wasn't John Bonham, by the way. That was an Alice in Chains song, but yeah. Anyway, welcome back to the show. It's segment number 2. Kris Hart is here. We're going to talk whiskey, but you wanted to mention something about a cigar. You said in the break.
Yeah. So our mutual friend Alan Denny now represents EP Carrillo cigars, and they just came out with something.
I love EP Carrillos.
and
Oh man,
you know, I had it pulled up. I thought it was the Encore. I had it at a tasting last or 2 weeks ago.
wow.
Our good friend Alan Denny supplied me with a stick, and I could not have been happier with it. I believe it's called the
nice.
Encore. Give me 2 seconds, and
If only we had
that's
some
correct.
sort of handheld device where we could check out things.
Yeah, if only there was a
like that.
box you could
Yeah.
ask questions.
We have this annual kind of a low-key, quiet, awesome whiskey tasting that takes place every year called the Gulf Coast Bourbon Maniacs, and I have nothing to do with it. I'm just a privileged guest that gets to come. But Alan brought these new sticks that hadn't been out yet, and they're nice. I'd probably say about 5.5 inches. They're box pressed. Couldn't have been happy with them. I have no idea what the retail price is, but having them back on the show, maybe outdoors somewhere where you guys can
love
smoke.
to do that. Yes,
I think
love to do that.
Alan would
We're
love
down
it for sure.
And EP Carrillo, I enjoy that whole line so much.
I really think they're improving. In the past, there was some that was a bit hit or miss, but over the past couple of years, I've had probably 6 solid different sticks.
Agree with you on that. That over the past couple of years, they do seem to have gotten better and better. So very good stuff. So we're welcoming you back to the show. It's Smoking and Toasting show number 80. Kris Hart is here, and Kris is so basically you're with 2 whiskey organizations of note. There is the Houston Bourbon Society,
Correct.
and then there's the Houston Whiskey Social, which is actually an event that you guys put together. But do you maintain like separate like Facebook groups and stuff for those 2, or is it all one, or how do you do that?
There's a lot of overlap, but it's been that way since the very beginning. So we started the Whiskey Social 3 years ago before Houston Bourbon Society came out, and a good buddy of mine, Matt Phillips, started the Houston Bourbon Society on December 5th, 2015, and I was one of the first six people in the door, and there's always been a ton of overlap. I promote the Houston Bourbon Society at all of our events, and I can comfortably say that I'm that our event has boosted the Houston Bourbon Society quite a bit.
I
right?
think so,
I mean, you
yeah.
guys are both from our
aware
Whiskey
of it,
Social,
sure,
and
yeah.
right. So there's definitely been a lot of overlap, but I run that with Matt Phillips and Randy Svetlik, 2 really great guys here in the Houston community. We're up to 3,000 members.
It's awesome.
And it's just been, natural growth, and of course growth from mentioning stuff like on ESPN and here, and there's been a lot of, like I said, overlap. But yeah, both 2 different entities per se, but there's a lot of support and overlap from both.
And the Whiskey Social, will this be your 3rd or your 4th?
So this will be our 3rd year.
Right.
But we've done about a dozen events. We've done dinners, classes, tastings. We've done a fall festival last year. Did you guys come to that?
We went to the one that was in the old, that was in the big building. That was the one we came to.
That was the one back in March of last year.
Yes.
May of last year.
May of last year, yes. Yeah.
So that one, actually, so this year we've actually, we were given square footage parameters for last year's event.
Mm-hmm.
Turned out the day of the event when we were lining stuff up that there wasn't enough room for certain things.
Mm-hmm.
So we immediately reached max capacity at that building. So last year we did just under 750 people. And this year we've decided to rent out the Citadel. Citadel's this awesome, just gorgeous fairy tale castle-like building of about 19,000 square feet. So this is, all in all, about almost 2.5 times last year's size.
Well, your event last year, and we told you this at the time, one of the better events of this type that we've ever been to.
Yes.
We both thought that.
That means a tremendous amount. It really does. Because all I've ever wanted is, Houston is the 4th largest city in the U.S., Los Angeles has this awesome event that's thousands of people. Chicago and New York, these massive events. And in fact, New York has a couple. And Houston, the 4th largest city, didn't quite have what it deserved.
Anything that was,
So luckily, thanks to a lot of support from people like Michelle Solomon, Yawante Curry, tons of industry folks here that have just been supportive, because I think they realize what we're trying to do is just grow the community here. And we have now reached a point where the Houston Bourbon Society, or HBS, is now seeing 60 new people a week, 80 people a week. I mean, it bounces, but
yeah, it's fantastic.
This year I've capped it at 1,000 people. We're trying to keep it under 1,000 people. But last year we did 300 whiskeys. This year we're introducing Pappy Van Winkle, the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection, which is just awesome. That covers the gamut of young bourbon, old bourbon, rye. I mean, the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection is fantastic. So,
well, we often talk about this on the show, that we know for a fact that we have a direct influence on sales.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we taste something, and on our way home from doing the show, we actually stop and pick
just
some up.
stop and
Of course. Yeah. Yeah,
So-
no.
But
Must
but
have
your
more of
event had a
that.
direct influence on sales. I can tell you about, because I went and bought a couple of things that I tasted for the first time at that event, and it's absolutely has an impact on sales, because there's a couple of things I might not ever have said, yeah, I'll drop $60-$70 for that bottle.
Yeah.
But when I tasted it, it was good. It was like, that's totally worth it. I'm buying that. You know?
There's this weird buyer's logic that happens, and it's not weird. It's reasonable. It's totally understandable. But it's very hard to prove an impact on these events unless you can prove movement of sales. So we did figure out a way around that this year or last year, and a lot of our VIP ticket holders received a very very nice surprise when they arrived to check in. So we did find a way around legally proving product movement without explaining too much more, because I can't.
Of course.
But it's a fun event, and I just want to introduce people to new things. And now, dude, the Houston Bourbon Society is now moving towards cognac and Armagnac, and anything that spends time in a barrel is they're cousins: whiskey, rum, cognac, like
All right.
brandy. Just
Yes.
awesome stuff.
Absolutely. And it's so exciting to see you guys branching out like this. Now, I want to get information on when and where and tickets.
Oh, yes.
But we need to do some tasting.
Okay,
first.
let's do that. We'll get back to it.
Yeah, yes. So we'll come back to this. I know. Have you already done your tasting of this first?
Done a little bit.
What are we tasting here? And you
We
need to
call
pour
it
yourself
research.
some more.
So this is Old Forester Birthday Bourbon. It's a fall release that comes out
Old
every
Forester.
year.
This is the round.
This is the
bottom
pot.
bottle.
I don't know
Yeah,
if you
the
can
pot
see that
still
there.
type.
Yeah.
Yep,
So
yep.
Old Forester Birthday Bourbon comes out once a year. I think there was 1 year it came out twice.
That's
but
the birthday moniker.
yeah, so 12 years old, and it's just a solid old. In fact, I mean, arguably the best
It's
Old
like
Forester product.
vanilla and maple.
Yeah, this is my kind of flavor profile.
See, I prefer a higher proof, but you don't even think about it when you taste it. When I taste it tastes higher proof.
What is the proof on this?
48%, which is not
You're
bad.
kidding
It's
me.
not bad. It's
Wow.
low. So Old Forester comes out with this annual release every year, and it can be very hard to find. But that's when I will tell those who are listening to don't just spend time at Specs. Spend time with your local mom and pops, and support them, because they will get maybe 1 or 2 bottles of this every year, and they will be calling you to get when those come in.
Sure,
So
sure.
it's a great product.
Tell me about what's the retail price tag on this bag?
So I want to say this year it was 80, 85,
Well,
$90.
That's delicious.
And it's just solid. I mean, it's a bit hard to travel with, especially
Because
in
of
our
the shape.
especially in our
Right,
new
right.
bags.
Yeah,
Shape of the bottle.
Yeah, how did you get that here?
I tell you, but it'd be embarrassing.
Yes. Well, it is good. I mean, it's like I said, this is the kind of flavor profile that I appreciate most. I'm less of the peat guy. I'm more of the maple and vanilla
Right.
type of
That
type
is
of flavors. And this
maple
is-
and vanilla
This has
all
got
day
it
long
just
now.
all day long.
That's the typical American palate. That is, we love our sugar, we love our brown maple syrup, we love those flavors, and that's why bourbon is going through such a boom right now.
Now I'm noticing the last several higher end rums that I've tried have had a real sort of like
It just goes.
yes, I love that.
I don't know if anyone can hear that, but
They've had a real cinnamony, not just the sweetness and the vanilla and the usual sort of barrel, but a real cinnamon thing. And I'm wondering, is this
Almost enough to burn.
is
like
this my
hot cinnamon.
palate shifting, or is there a real trend towards this? I wonder in rum. You were talking about the typical American palate, right?
So, and the same thing applies to rum. Rum is sugar, right? And
Right.
we, as Americans, we go through a lot of rum. And
Yes.
It's not always good rum.
Right.
It's often mixed with other stuff, but we go through a lot of rum. So I will tell you that I recently introduced my wife to some higher end rums, and she did not enjoy it right away. It's a different profile, but we now both go through quite a bit of rum at the house. Yes, your palate will easily shift the moment you acclimate to once you remove expectations of what you expect to taste. You'll find your
palate
your
does
appreciation.
shift.
Yeah. So when you taste bourbon and you're expecting to taste bourbon, and then it doesn't taste like bourbon, then you say, okay, this is a bad bourbon. When you taste rum and you have no experience in rum, your only familiarity is bourbon. You may expect to pick up on bourbon notes, and then when
Right.
it tastes completely opposite, you're turned off by it.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Well, but I'm seeing a lot of whiskey and bourbon drinkers kind of getting into the
There's
rum
becoming
thing
a large
nowadays.
crossover,
Yes.
I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, they're cousins, and so the entire community benefits from the bourbon boom, branching off into rums. And there's a phenomenal line that is almost to Texas. It's not quite here yet, called Habitation Valier, and it's just some of the best rums in the market. And I cannot wait till they get here.
Look forward to it.
There it is.
It wasn't a loud one, but I have just popped the top on something I was very excited to find. Anchor Brewing Company, the guys responsible for Anchor
Brewing
Steam.
is yummy.
Yeah, San Francisco-based brewery. Anchor Steam is great. We have loved their Christmas beers. Love their Christmas beers. Every year
I
it's
buy their
different, and
Christmas
every
beers,
year
yeah.
it's good. I just found their Go West IPA, and so I had to try some of this for the show because, after all, it's IPA and it's Anchor. So, like, there's nothing wrong with this equation, is what I'm beginning to
Also,
think.
it's probably not going to get more West Coast IPA than that.
Well, it should be interesting because one of the things that's happening with a lot of the West Coast breweries is that they are starting to brew the quote-unquote New England IPAs, which are the hazy, fruity
Right.
IPAs. So I have a feeling, though, this one's going to be very West Coast oriented because it is called, and it's got the Anchor Brewing elephant on the label, but it's called Anchor Brewing Go West IPA. So I'm thinking that there's a good chance we've got some, Cascade hops going on here. Let me see what it says on the bottle. Oh, I can't read it because that's just far too small a print for me to be
It's
able to
too
read.
tiny.
But
Do you want
I
me
can
to-
tell you.
Do you want me to look it up?
You want to
on
take
the-
a shot
on
at
the
it? Here?
device?
Oh, you would look. Yeah, what I do know about this beer is that I've never had an Anchor product that I have not liked. So I can tell you before you even go in here that I'm expecting this to be something that we're going to be, that at least I will be pretty happy with being the guy that loves IPAs. But I'm always interested to see how the IPAs go over with Ian because his palate's a little different.
Well,
from mine.
Beer Advocate popped up first with this.
Well, don't say it yet. Don't taint the review. Oh, I mean, read it, but don't give the review.
No,
number.
no. So this is the 6.7 ABV,
Okay.
available year round,
That's pretty high,
and they don't have any other information whatsoever about it.
Well, I can already tell you that it's very tropically fruity, that it's got a nice carbonation to it, and it's a little more sessionable than some West Coast IPAs that I've had. It's like a little more sessionable than like the Stones and some of the other sort of California IPAs.
It has the bright hoppiness of the typical West Coast IPA, but it's tailored. It's tempered by having a little bit more malt profile in the middle.
Yes, and the malt in the middle it keeps the bitterness from being quite as tangy
bitter,
on the
yeah.
end. I mean, we talk about IPAs a lot, and one of the things that kind of has been frustrating about the whole juicy IPA trend, there's gotten a lot of people into IPAs who then go and taste a more, like a West Coast or a different style IPA, and then they complain about it being bitter. It's an IPA.
That's
They're
what it's supposed to.
to be
It's
bitter.
what it does,
That's
right?
Right.
that harkens back to the expectations of
Right.
when you go into beer.
But that said, I love when the malt balance keeps the
See,
hops from overtaking
This
the
is a
flavor
little more
profile.
balanced, I think, than what I'd expect from when you say a West Coast IPA, because I've been conditioned now when you say West Coast IPA. I'm so used to
You
the
start thinking
IPA
about
just being this huge hop bomb
Hop
that's
explosion.
bitter from the beginning to the middle to the end, and this actually has that warm, malty thing happening in the middle. Now, not enough. It's not a real malty IPA,
Right.
but it has just enough of that to really smooth out the center of the flavor of this, and then leave you with the bitterness and the aftertaste that makes you go, I'd like another sip.
Sure.
Not,
Yeah.
how
So-
do I brush my tongue off to get that out of my mouth?
I did show that bottle to the camera, and it is the typical Anchor-shaped bottle, which is kind of a unique bottle shape in the beer world.
It's very
which is kinda
maritime.
cool. Yeah,
Very
very
maritime.
maritime. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So I would agree with you. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I love it. Being the IPA guy, I certainly have those that fall into my favorites category, and I would put this in that category pretty squarely. This is an IPA I could drink on a regular basis, and will.
And I think I've said this probably 2 or 3 times before when I've been on. And again, thank you guys for having me on so much. But it reminds me of a hot summer days yard working beer.
Mm-hmm.
And I always get that from IPAs in general, not so much from the any IPAs or the hazy IPAs, but this to me, I think it brings out a whole lot more flavor, that higher proof.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is it typical to see almost 7% from an IPA?
It's not unusual,
Not
like,
unheard of.
particularly like you look at like the Stone IPAs and those
are bigger.
West Coast. Those
Yeah,
can
than
be
the
even
7%.
bigger than the 7s. Yeah, so
It's a bit more bolder. I'm definitely pick up on some maltiness behind the fruit, but I think it's great.
when we come back, I want to talk celebrity spirits, and I want to talk a little more about.
Lots to say about that.
Yeah, I was hoping you did. So I want to talk about that, and I also want to talk about a little more about the Whiskey Social and how people can participate in it this year, because you said it's going to be limited to 1,000, so people are not going to want to wait to buy tickets. So we'll give you the information here coming up in the next segment. And Chris, what are we sampling in our next segment?
Well, it depends on. We can go. I've got a great single malt. I'd like to go back to Glendronach, or we can visit this nice maple
Well, let's
shade.
hold on to the maple shade
Okay.
for the last segment, and we'll go Glendronach. Did you say?
Yeah, Glendronach's
All right.
great.
Let's go there next. It's Smoking and Toasting. You are listening to the show that is all about craft beer, fine spirits, and hand-rolled cigars. We'll be right back.
Is there any way we can zoom out on my fat head a little bit further in that particular camera? Just a little bit more. Does it go out any? See, it doesn't go out any further, does it? Oh, there
See,
it goes.
we like doing those like really tight shots that look, because it's that whole style that they shoot TV shows.
You can
now,
come in a little
where they
bit.
don't show
We're
the
actually
person's
going
full
for
head.
Yeah.
for like the good, the bad, and the ugly style.
Yeah, well, you got the
Trying to
ugly,
get
that's for damn
trying to get
sure.
That one bead of sweat coming
Yeah.
down your temple, you know.
All right,
I will just say this again for Facebook Live during the break.
it's really good.
Dig this IPA.
What was the price on
Yeah,
that?
love it.
that's a good IPA.
I think it was-
That's a good balanced IPA.
I want to say it was maybe $10.99 for the 6-pack. So maybe just
That's
a
not bad.
buck higher than you can get most.
You know, you say I'm not the IPA guy. I'm just not into IPAs that taste like you're crunching
I know
on a
that,
pine cone the entire
Right,
time.
but I think
like
of
something
myself
that has
as more
some
the IPA guy.
interest to it.
You're more that the Barleywine and the
Chewy
the
beers.
triples. You like the chewy beers.
I also love a chewy beer.
I didn't
Something
get it.
thick of grain,
I freaked him out a little bit.
sediment.
Man,
One time I brought one of the Harvest Ales, and we poured it in a glass, and it had chunks in it.
I
Yeah.
love it.
I'm still not over that.
Really, it bothers you?
Oh, I did not want to chew my beer.
Have you seen the new glitter beer craze?
Yes, I have.
Oh yeah, my wife had one of
We
those
haven't really
up
talked
at.
about it, but it's
Yeah, there's
you know what?
literally
I've had
glitter in the beer.
I've been
and when
having
you pour
glitter
it,
beer like back in my single
swirls.
days. I had glitter beer all the time. What would happen is I'd be at the Topless bar,
right?
and some of the
Ta-
glitter
tassels.
from the stripper would fall into my beer.
Is this on Facebook Live?
Glitter
beer, yeah.
gets
I don't know if I can be part of this
everywhere.
conversation.
This was back in the day.
Glitter
Oh.
gets everywhere. If one person in the room has a spot of glitter on them, everybody in the room ends up with glitter on them.
Oh, it's so true.
I don't even know
so
how.
true.
Like physically, that's kind of impossible. But glitter, I think, is.
It's permanent, by the way. You can never get rid of all of it.
You never get rid of the glitter.
All right. We are back, and we'll do another bit. Let's save your beer for the last segment.
Sounds good. Just glad I didn't screw it up this time.
I just want you to know that since I did a review on Black and Mild, that I'm coming in with some Old E next time.
You're coming in with what?
Some Old E.
What is that?
What is this segment 4?
No, three.
3.
This is gone. It always flies by.
It goes by so fast.
Flies by so fast.
All right.
What you got there, Cruze?
The old Numbskull.
Oh, you know I love that. You know I love the old
All right,
Numbskull.
let's rock it. All right, we'll go whiskey first, and then a little old Numbskull.
And I haven't been able to find the old Numbskull recently.
Yeah, I think I remember you mentioning that. Welcome back. It's Smoking and Toasting.
That music is bawdy.
It is, and it's boisterous, and it makes me want to Drink lots of beer and
Raucous.
whiskey. Yes. This is Smoking and Toasting, craft beer, fine spirits, hand-rolled cigars. It's our 80th show, and it's Whiskey Social Time with Kris Hart, who we are thrilled to have guesting on the program. Kris, our show is brought to you by a place that I know you have some fondness for, B&B Butchers and Restaurant.
Big fan.
At 1814 Washington
Pork
Ave in
belly.
Houston, and in the shops at Clear Fork in Fort Worth. Yes, and the bacon. Come on, the bacon.
Bacon.
So we are sampling yet another. You mentioned, by the way, that you were thrilled that we'd invited you to be on the show so many times. Let me just say, it's kind of like, you ever invite somebody over for like a party and they bring a really good bottle, whether it's like a spirit or wine or something, and you wind up like, I would say to my wife, make sure they get invited again. And that's kind of the way it is.
Is that what
Kris.
it is?
He always brings such good stuff. Of course you're going to be invited back again.
You know, he has a
Get it?
personality too.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that's not the main focus.
But let's talk about the stuff he brings, because that
Many people don't like that personality.
No, you
I
always
mean, he
do
hasn't brought it with him yet. But
yeah, you always you always
good
do
one.
bring great stuff. What are we sampling now, Kris?
So, a couple things, right now we're sampling Glendronach 21 Parliament. So Glendronach, which was recently bought by Brown Forman, they do Old Forester, Jack Daniels,
Yeah,
Woodford Reserve.
Woodford Reserve. Which, by the way, I had a Woodford Reserve the
Good
other night
standby.
at dinner. Oh, man, was it good!
good standby.
They've actually got
Man, was it good.
a couple things coming out this year. They've got a single malt coming out. They've got, I just saw earlier another version of their no, that's not Woodford Reserve, but Old Forester's got another brand coming out this year. So there's so much happening in the Brown Forman portfolio that it's exciting.
Okay, so for you, when a brand like this gets purchased by a Brown Forman,
It's not a bad thing.
it's not a bad
Yes,
thing,
I-
because we're going through this big time in the craft beer world right now, and it kind of feels like maybe it isn't a great thing sometimes when some of the craft breweries get purchased by the big boys.
Let me give you an example. Westland in Seattle. So Westland Distillery out of Seattle just got bought out by Remy Cointreau, and they, but they're almost entirely, completely hands off. No, they are entirely, completely hands off in the process of making the spirit. So Westland, even though they're now owned by a huge pocketbook, a huge conglomerate, they are making it how they've always made it.
They're still making the same
uninterfered.
product. Right,
Correct.
uninterfered,
right.
yeah.
So and if you go back and listen to past episodes that I've been on, I've been playing devil's advocate with you guys when it comes to buyouts, because it depends on the type of buyout. As long as they don't affect the process, can I cuss? I don't give a shit.
Yeah, no, of course, and you absolutely can. Bobby isn't here anymore. Bobby was the one that got worked up when we cussed. So,
Yeah.
no, it's absolutely true that I will tell you, and we're going to have some on the show and review it, but it may be a little while because we've got so many great beers. But like, I had a chance to taste Carbock's new Weekday Warrior, their session IPA. It's freaking delicious.
Yeah.
I mean, it's wonderful. And Carbock, of course, was bought by Anheuser-Busch. And I'm not a big fan of the AB boys. They've been pissing me off lately. But I
Totally understandable,
love
too.
the Carbock guys, and I love their passion for beer, and I love what
they
they're doing.
make so many sessionable beers too.
They do.
Like, they're good at that.
They do. And I don't know if you recall, Ian, but it wasn't that many shows ago we had their Barleywine. Remember, in the big
Yep.
wow, was it,
It was good. The Nigel.
It was just absolutely good.
Nigel,
So-
they have that on tap at the New Potato. I've sampled it a few
Oh,
times.
very nice. Love the New Potato. Shout outs to those guys. They're
Yes.
awesome. So this is very interesting on the nose.
Yeah, so
I haven't
this is
tasted
a
it yet.
21-year-old single malt that's aged entirely in sherry barrels. And
I was going to
believe
say,
they
so that's
yeah.
what I'm getting on the nose, because I was going to say, this has almost got like a little bit of a cognac vibe to it, but it's the
I've
sherry
been doing
that's making me
research.
think that.
Okay.
Yes?
Over here.
Oh,
Yes.
I see.
You're a research-oriented guy. That's one of the things I love about
You guys have been talking a lot. I've been doing my research. This is actually amazing.
Okay, I'm so glad you said that, because I agree completely.
Like, I feel like I actually have an oak stave stuck in my
Oh my
mouth
God,
right
you're so
now.
right. I just took my first sip.
it's
That's been soaked in sherry and wonderfulness.
Wow.
Like, it is so good. And the
I want a T-shirt that
smokiness in
says
it.
that. Soaked in sherry and wonderfulness. I would wear that T-shirt everywhere.
Well, I'm familiar with the liquid. I have my wife bought me a bottle of the
Allardyce.
the
18-year-old.
18, which is so good. And this has,
I love how he knew which one, by the way. This is
Right.
why.
Yeah.
This is actually why you're such a great guest.
and it actually has a lot of the same smoky profile that this has. Like, that's maybe just the Glendronach thing is that smokiness that you get. Now, it's a little peaty, but it's a lot smoky, and it's so good, and it blends in, and it doesn't stick to your mouth like some really smoky whiskeys get. This is great.
So this is done in a mix of Oloroso and Pedro Jimenez sherry casks. It's 21 years old, and from what I understand, they've been out of it for a minute since last year's release. They are re-releasing it here in the next few months with a much wider production, a wider release, and it is just all to me. My goal in spirits is the fall flavors, the Christmas flavors, the dried fruits, the prunes.
That's what you love personally,
I
right?
love
This has
it.
all those dark
Sherry.
fruits, yeah.
This is a Thanksgiving bottle. It's what you bring over to the house with the family, and after you're eating a slice of pumpkin pie, you pour yourself some Glendronach 21 or some 18, and it's the only criticism is I'd like to see about 5% more in ABV. I like to see a little bit more bolder
I
flavor,
was
but
going
it's
to say,
awesome.
at Thanksgiving, I'm not so sure because you pour this like for everybody after the meal,
Depending
and then
on
you're
how you
sitting
get along
around
with
and you
your
start
family.
arguing Dallas Cowboys with people.
Yeah, it
'cause
just depends on the family. Yeah.
Because everybody's like really, because the Cowboys will be on TV, and everybody like either loves them or hates them. So it's a beautiful.
I have a
you know.
Steelers terrible towel that I like to taunt my wife with.
And yet, I love you as a friend. So see, that just goes to show you.
Let's start bringing it to the show and where's that headband?
Yeah. This is great though.
This
like
is amazing.
I really, really love this.
What I really love about this though too is like it does so many things. Like, it's smooth, it's delicious, it's smoky, it's all that. The finish is so good on this.
Am I getting apple in there?
So again, going back, I mentioned
But green apple.
I mentioned
Yes.
every Christmas flavor except baked apple, which is one of my or apple. Period. I mean, apple pie. What I
Apple
know
pie,
there's
yes.
a
No, I
fight
get it.
eternally between pecan pie and apple pie, but
No, apple wins that hands down.
I think I love pecan pie.
well,
and it definitely has a
pecan
lot
pie
of
is
the bourbon.
more southern.
Have you ever had bourbon thrown
Yeah.
in your pecan pie?
My wife makes a great bourbon pecan pie.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Oh, I've
But
never tried
that being said, well, and Crown
And I-
Royal actually releases a pecan pie Thanksgiving. That's pretty damn good.
Noted.
You go to Specs and it's just a $20 pecan pie with a crap ton of Crown Royal in it. It's not bad.
I'm going to stand up for my HEB. Like, across the street, I have a Dot Coffee Shop, which is a Papa's
Yeah,
restaurant.
yeah.
And they have an awesome pecan pie. It's like $18.
Oh wow, that's
right?
good.
My HEB right behind that makes a pecan pie that's about 90% as good at $5.
You know you're from Texas when you're throwing HEB references. That's all I have to say.
At $5.
$5. Yeah.
HEB,
Yeah.
and this is completely off topic. HEB is the Amazon of the grocery store
It
world.
kind of
Totally,
is.
totally.
Yes,
They're not going away. They've
Although-
won. They've won the fight.
Although I will tell you, the Amazon of the grocery store world may be Amazon
Eventually,
because I was at
Right.
actually I was at Whole Foods, which is where I bought the Go West IPA that we tried earlier. I had not seen that. Now I'm not saying it's not at other places I shop. That's just where I saw it, and they have a really nice craft beer selection.
if Amazon keeps heading in the direction they are, I would not be surprised if they're the ones to finally change Texas laws to allow shipping of alcohol.
Oh, wouldn't that be an awesome
I mean,
thing?
you're talking about the company that's now almost near the $1 trillion mark, the first $1 trillion company ever. Amazon is such a monster that I would not be surprised if between them and, because Walmart was suing to allow alcohol sales, between them two, I wouldn't be surprised if we would be able to order beer from Amazon within the next 5 years.
It's interesting that all this stuff is so interesting to talk about, and I think that it, the liquor laws are so different in every state, and there's so many things to talk about, but I want to make sure I get to this
Yeah, go
while
ahead.
we have you on the show.
Sure.
Your thoughts on... Well, okay, so here's the story that kicked it off. John Rich, Big and Rich, the country
Okay.
duo, right?
Okay.
Very popular. I like John Rich. I've seen him on television shows and stuff. Seems like a really, really smart guy. I dig him. He is releasing his own whiskey. And it is a a very interesting thing that he's doing, and he is calling it Redneck. These are the guys that did Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy. I'm looking to make sure that I get the name right because this didn't actually print out.
So
like I
before
wanted
you
to, but
before you tell me that,
Yeah.
I'm just going to add the note that there's already a bunch of red flags happening.
okay,
Anytime a celebrity releases a spirit, it's almost exclusively a watered down to 40%
right.
bulk mass product that's not worth your time. But
And this is a interestingly enough, this is a Redneck Riviera whiskey.
okay,
That's
yeah.
what he's
So
calling it.
that right off the bat, I'm out. So
Right.
now
So would you try it though?
I'd be more than happy to try it. I'm not a snob. I really don't think I'm a snob. But if there are always some preconceived red flags, green lights that you see in spirits before you even taste it, and that's proof, where the product is sourced, the name, and the label. So if
Well,
you
there have been some pretty good celebrity wines. I mean, like Maynard James Keenan of Tool has a winery.
wine's different than
And-
spirits. A bulk produced product in a very gaudy, awful bottle that wasn't worth your time. And I don't know how well it's doing in sales. I don't think it's good, but no whiskey collector is putting Virginia Black on a shelf.
All right, so let me see if this will change your mind. I have one more piece of news to share in
Okay.
this general area. There's a new tequila brand that is in the planning stages. It's from the Backstreet Boys.
I'm out. In fact, I'm so out that I have to leave right now.
You were
I
out
have to
before
go.
I finished the word boys. Like I said, back. I'm out.
I have to physically leave the building right now.
So they're working on trying to actually. It may be a.
What's
a,
it called?
Wait.
What's it called?
I'm curious. I'm curious for a second here. Like, why does a grown man have strong feelings about a teenage girl band?
No, they're
Well,
not,
don't
they're
call them a
not
teenage girl
girls.
band, man.
They're not girls.
Backstreet's back, and they're in my heart. So I don't know what you're talking about. But
Okay, so
Them-
Sorry, no. They're a boy band, but we're
they're an everybody band.
all I have to say is that when we go through, like in the 100th episode, when we look back,
We're gonna
at
play that sound
the
bite.
episodes that have been and pull sound bites. That will be one of them.
Listen, Spice Girls, Backstreet Backstreet Boys. Do you remember Backstreet Boys and NSYNC had a battle between each other where
Yeah.
you were either a girl that liked Backstreet Boys or a girl who liked NSYNC?
I was a girl who liked NSYNC.
You were a girl who liked NSYNC?
Yes.
Can we grab that soundbite
Yes,
real
we
quick?
can grab that one as well.
You know, I wasn't a fan of either.
No, I know you weren't, but I have to say I actually wasn't an NSYNC fan, but Justin Timberlake did win me over.
Okay, so
Listen, if you don't
the
love
first
Justin Timberlake in
solo
general, then we're not
Justin
friends.
Timberlake album
Yeah.
is a guilty pleasure.
Oh,
And
absolutely
actually, I
guilty
like
pleasure.
pretty much everything he's done since then.
So let me just
But that's a
say
halftime
different.
show. It was dog shit.
Well, let me go on record though as saying "Man of the Woods," that song from title track from his new album. I've listened to it 50
And there's
times.
also
I love it.
There's also Dick in a Box. He's got a sense of humor.
Yes, he does.
Oh,
Yes,
he's
he
actually
does.
tremendously funny.
By the way, we've officially cussed more on this show than all the shows. And Kris Hart, I believe, is the
major guilty party.
Well, I'm just. I
My
think you're
apologies.
the
a
catalyst.
very bad influence.
You're a bad influence. You and your whiskey
you
and
see me
your
wag my
bourbon.
pencil at
and
you?
your-
Yeah.
All right, we are. I don't even need to tell you about Backstreet Boys because the truth is they haven't even sourced their tequila yet.
I
They've
would-
just
I would
announced
try
that
it.
they
Wait,
want.
are you
to
saying
do
that Backstreet's back?
Apparently they're back, and according to Kris, they're in your heart.
In my heart, that's
Yeah.
right. So I will tell you this: if there was actually a celebrity produced spirit that produced like a cask strength option or something really
Right.
craft and genuine,
Yes.
I would welcome it with open arms. But when you say first celebrity, then you say a watered down spirit, and then you say a bulk produced product, these are all red flags that just add up to I'm out.
So let me just say this: Sammy Hagar was the guy that did Cabo Wabo tequila. That Cabo Wabo was a very good tequila, particularly the Reposado and their Añejo. Now he sold it; he doesn't own it anymore, and he now has a rum. Which, you know what? I'll get us some. We'll taste it on the show. But I can just tell you from having, like, it's okay for a cheap rum. Like, it's not. It's kind of like what you're talking
Hey,
about.
didn't we have Hanson's beer on here that is called, and I'm not actually joking about this, it's called Hops.
Yeah,
I believe
was
we
it
did.
good?
It wasn't bad.
I would try it.
I
would try
it was
anything.
worth trying. It was worth trying. It's not like I go out of my way.
When we come back,
But it's funny, just situationally.
when we come back, I brought something that I know Ian likes. It's Alesmith's Old Numbskull.
I love that stuff.
And we'll be tasting it. It's the Barleywine Ale. And we've got more whiskey to taste, too. This is a very fun show.
I'm going to do my best to act like I've never tasted it.
Okay, yeah. I'd love to hear you be, like, really surprised when you take that first sip.
Watch my face, because I'm going to be like,
wow. It's Smoking and Toasting, and you are listening to the show that is brought to you by our friends at B&B Butchers and Restaurant at 1814 Washington Ave in Houston and in the shops at Clear Fork and Fort Worth. We'll be right back.
I gotta run to the bathroom. This has been a lot of fun.
That's why we do
Where's
the
the
show,
next
because we
bathroom?
have a good time. Out the front door of the suite, and then it's right by the water fountains to the left.
oh, I got attacked by a stretch.
There we go. Facebook Live.
You knew we were going to talk about Backstreet Boys today.
Yes, I did.
You brought this upon us.
I did. I fully admit this.
You don't even feel sad about it?
I don't even feel like
You're like
remorse
nothing.
of any kind.
Can I try some of that whiskey I just tried?
Oh,
Certainly.
I didn't realize we weren't
No,
pouring you
you're
any.
good. It just-
Yeah, let me have this bottle ready
There
out.
you go.
This I'm very impressed with this, and again, this is not like the flavor profile that I go to automatically, but it's
That
really good.
is amazing.
Really, really good.
Yeah, because you don't like the
Like,
the
that's so
Right,
good.
but this is not as peaty. This
That's
is
so
more
good
sherry
it'll make you
cask.
take back stuff you didn't even steal.
That's good.
Like, that's how good it
Thank you,
is.
sir. And you should also try. What was the
What is the beer they're known for? Their first beer came
Anchor
out.
Steam.
Okay, yeah, and that was like the original IPA or
It was.
like
It was
the
actually they were the
Steam.
first. They're
first-
credited as being the first real craft brewery.
Okay, that's what
craft
it is.
brewery. They're not the
That's what it
oldest brewery, so you can if you include like Yuengling as craft beer, it's older. But they're considered with basically starting the craft beer movement,
that's
like
what it
back
was.
in the late 70s.
Yes, and Yuengling is simultaneously the oldest
oldest brewery,
operating
oldest
brewery
operating brewery in America.
in America and the most difficult to
So
spell.
when I tried
Yes.
when I tried their beer, the Anchor Steam,
Yeah.
and I tried and I was like, man, this is so
Anchor
good.
Steam is
Oh, it's
very
a
good.
wonderful
Yes.
beer.
It's
Yeah.
better than like, and it's so easy. I feel like anyone can drink it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
But I
Anchor
drink it,
Steam,
anyone can
yeah,
drink it,
absolutely.
Enjoy the nice flavor.
Well, then
That's
this is
a
what,
that's
again,
a great gateway.
Again, we've got to
craft.
do the Gateway Beers episode.
It was so
We
good.
should do gateway beers.
That would be a great episode, I think. There's so many great episodes we could do.
My colleague that works for a distributor is chiming in about Redneck Riviera.
I saw that.
80 proof label, small batch, vanilla honey smoothness. Yeah, that's all red flags.
And subtle oak finishes.
Yeah.
That means it's simple.
So yes, correct.
All right,
And-
so-
It's like,
Will you
I'm
talk
pretty
about
sure
this?
you can say
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
yeah, and I won't mention that he works for a distributor, but
Okay,
I'll just
all right.
I'll talk about the notes.
Because I'll challenge you on that and go 80 proof. That sounds pretty good, right?
No, it's not
No,
good.
I
Nah.
I know, but then
Oh,
you
I
can
see what you're
be-
saying.
Right,
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
40%.
yeah.
right.
It's the minimum.
Right, I understand.
Like below
ready
that,
when you are,
it's
sir.
a liqueur.
Welcome back to Smoking and Toasting. We are thrilled to have you listening to show number 80. And let me just say, again, as I have said previous times on the show, the Suffers are like one of the most important emerging bands in the world right
They're
now.
so
And if you're
good.
not paying attention to them, you need to be because they're
Suffers?
awesome. The Suffers,
The
yes.
Suffers.
They are Gulf Coast soul, and they're amazing. Okay, so we're glad to have you back on Smoking and Toasting. We have been tasting whiskeys and beers, and we're going to continue to do that. But we just to wrap this conversation about celebrity spirits, what would it take for you to go? Well, obviously, what it would take is tasting something and liking it, right?
Right.
But what would it take for you to say this might be worth my time?
So I mentioned a bunch of green lights, right? So a higher proof, a reasonable price, non-ridiculous, over-the-top packaging is a big part.
Right.
A lot of times
You don't want
celebrities will produce this.
Their smiling face on the label, and
well,
yeah.
no, not so much. I I honestly wouldn't mind their face on the label as long as it didn't come in some ridiculous box and cost $150.
Oh,
right?
okay. So you're talking about the pseudo fancy packaging.
Correct.
Yep.
And then on top of that, you've got, I think someone had mentioned that Redneck Riviera is an 80 proof label. It says small batch. With
So 80 proof. I mean, does that make you feel any better?
No, that's the minimum. That's the minimum. The minimum requirement to be called whiskey.
If
is
it's
80
lower
proof.
than that, I think it becomes liqueur.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure on that. I just know that it's not.
If that's not true, I'm saying it's true anyway.
I like when Ian just throws stuff out there like that. And like, that sounds good. I'm going with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. Glendronach here. So Glendronach is
that we just sampled in the last segment.
Right,
yes.
is a widely popular, widely loved, and well-respected spirit across beer, rum, tequila, whatever. Everyone loves Glendronach, and it's bottled at 48%. That little bump cuts into their margins, but it brings out a much more bold product.
A bolder product.
Yeah.
Sure.
And then there's notes here listening that says Redneck Riviera is a small batch with vanilla honey, smoothness, and subtle oak
Well,
finishes.
that sounds good.
It sounds good, but if you know what you're reading, it's garbage. So smoothness doesn't mean anything. Smoothness is a complete lack of flavor. It's not a descriptor.
Now, see, when I say smoothness in like relation to a cigar, though,
Different.
that could be a good thing.
So when people say smooth, in regards to whiskey, they're saying, "I just shot it and it wasn't miserable to shoot." But when you're sipping whiskey, you wouldn't shoot it, and smoothness wouldn't come up at all. Now, you can say there's an abrasiveness or a young corn bite, but smoothness is not a descriptor. It doesn't mean anything.
So in the beer world, I think our code word is sessionable. Like if it's something that doesn't have too much bite to it and we feel like we're not feeling the ABVs as being too high and it feels like it's a little thirst quenching, we'll say it's sessionable.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So what would the equivalent of that be in the spirits world that wasn't a bad thing?
I can't quite put my finger on it. I'll say this. When you're reading a label and it says the word like it's smooth and it's 40%, these are all things that tell you that this is really marketed towards the general unbeknownst. And I say ignorant as a matter of...
But not the people who are really into the craft
Yeah,
side of
ignorance
things, right?
is not necessarily an insult. Ignorance just means you don't know any better.
Well, people would say that Bud Light is smooth and easy to drink.
Correct, because it quite literally is void of anything. I mean, it's the most...
Well, which means it is actually smooth and easy to drink.
Correct.
Have you ever
Which is
listened
not
to
a good thing when you want a spirit.
Unless it's warm.
You ever listen to the Jim Rome show?
Negative.
Okay, so Jim Rome does this sports talk show, and when someone says something really, really good on the show, he says "racket," that's his code for
Grab that.
We'll grab that soundbite. We're going to want that later. When you just said that Bud Light was, what did you say? Void of anything.
You said Bud Light was smooth, and I said exactly. It's void of anything.
Void of anything. Racket.
It's not
racket. That's good.
There's nothing crazy
there.
Listen. Drinking serves two purposes. Drinking, whether it's beer, rum, spirits, tequila, drinking is either to get drunk, to get hammered, or to experience something. Mm-hmm. In every episode of the show, you guys experience something.
We try to.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. So when you want to experience something, you want it to take you on a ride. Mm-hmm. And Bud Light is a roller coaster with no ups and downs.
Can you just come back every week?
But at least it has a long line.
I will tell you this.
Yeah.
In the
right.
In the realm of Bud Light, I like Bud.
It's like getting on a roller coaster that doesn't go up; it just goes around.
Yes,
I love
it's
this.
like the kitty thing where it just goes in a circle.
Oh my God, I love it.
I really enjoy the. If I had to choose, Budweiser Red Label is the better of the two. It's at least to take you. It at least takes you on a ride.
All right.
If you had to choose, look at that, and that right there is
That's an experience.
That's an experience.
Right. It's part of why we do this, silly thing that we do where we like to open the bottles, both the beers and the spirits, on the air because it is part of the experience. When my wife and I are big fans of champagne, like at home, or sparkling wine, right? Part of the fun is when that cork comes out. It's part of the experience. I love that.
Now,
Did you say poop?
I said foop.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I thought
The
you
sound
said
effect, foop.
Yeah, food. Yes, sir.
No, not that.
I for a second there, I thought you went. This has been our cussing show, so I thought maybe you were trying to.
Then he wouldn't have said poop.
Thought he was trying to steer it back the other way.
Right?
Yeah, that's all.
So Kris mentioned earlier that a lot of times he doesn't listen to our podcast because he likes the visual side of it.
I prefer to watch y'all's show. Yeah.
So apparently, we're entertaining that way. We need to be more audio, though.
Okay.
So that's why
Foop
was one of my
was an audio.
sound effects.
Do you guys-
and I want you guys to feel what's going on.
Chris, this is a good time, I think, to ask you this question as we're about to taste the old Numbskull from Alesmith. You've got a show of your own coming out, and I want you to talk about it. Tell us, what is it about? How is it put together? When does it start, and where can people find it?
So, I had originally, 2-3 years ago, Doug, as you know, Doug Harris, my marketing guy, he had approached me about doing a show. We weren't quite at that stage yet,
right.
So we put it off for a while.
A whiskey-oriented show?
Whiskey-oriented show, and I actually kind of want to cover the gamut of barrel-aged spirits, period.
Love that idea.
We shot a pilot a couple. It's been almost 2 months now, and it went very well. But there was a little bit of a conflict of interest with the platform versus the brands that I'm wanting to bring in and promote and have that control over. So, and
you're obviously wanting to be kind of brand agnostic in a way that allows you to say what you want to say.
I want to say what I want to be honest with
right.
people, and I also want to get brands on and have that interaction, our relationship entirely contained between us, instead of having to go through a third party,
a promoter,
because then you run the risk of what happens if there's a fallout there, and then they don't want to come to the event.
Yes.
So I've been in talks, and I can't say quite who yet, but I've been in talks with a pretty large local media company who wants to do it. We're working on trying to start filming and recording next week. That will be out soon, but I've got some pretty big names lined up, like Fred No. He's the retired master distiller with Beam Distillery. So they make Knob Creek, they make Beam White Label, Beam Black Label. I mean, they make some of the most bookers. So Creeks. Fred will be on the show pretty early on. I'm working on getting a couple other people locally probably in first to kind of work out the kinks. But it's going to be just like the same thing, just conversational, and let's drink together and talk. And
I love it. And we're obviously we will be big fans, and you can come to
and I want you on. I want you
of
guys
course
to come
we want
on.
to be on. Wait a second. Do we have to bring the same quality spirits to your show that you bring
and this
to
is
ours?
all trash. No one drinks this. So
no, you'll be able to find out about the show. Obviously, if you're following us on Facebook or anything, we'll tell you exactly where and when, and you can find it, of course, by following Houston Whiskey Social or the Houston Bourbon Society as well.
Correct. Yeah, you're going to follow it all over the page.
All right, so we're about to taste an Alesmith Old Numbskull Barleywine Ale. It is 11% alcohol by volume. And a Great American Beer Festival 2008 named Alesmith the Brewing Company of the Year, Small Brewing Company of the Year. And Ian, of course, has already let the cat out of the bag that this is something he's already familiar with.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
I've never tried this before.
Okay, so can we get a close up on Ian's face as we get his unrehearsed reaction to the Barleywine Ale from Alesmith called Old Numbskull? Can we do that?
Yep, it's on.
Great Jehoshaphat's.
That worked. That worked for me. Ian, your thoughts about the Old Numbskull?
Old Numbskull, first off, comes in at the right price point.
Mm-hmm.
It's
not
$6?
I think that's right. I don't remember.
Yeah,
but yeah,
it's
I think
$6
that's right.
for a bomber of this stuff. This is a fantastic barley wine. It's a little bit leaning more towards a U.S.
Because it's got
style
it's more the barley wine
hoppy.
Ale. Yeah, and it's got a little of the hoppy.
It's a little hoppier, but
it
it has the classic barley wine profile that you expect. Lots of raisin, lots of like that kind of date, dark plum almost.
Dark,
there's a little bit of bitterness
overripe
from the
fruit,
hop, right? The overripe banana
in a good
thing.
way. Yes, in a good way.
Yeah, there's a little dankness to it. It's very sweet, very big, and it's 11%.
Ian has taught me that dank can be a good word when it comes to certain beers.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's syrupy, and that's something that, and I'm glad you have a little bit left because I'd like to.
It does have a heavy
I'd like for you to
mouthfeel.
taste it compared to the maple shade. So maple.
Very excited about
what's
these,
the
yes.
percentage of that?
This is 11, yes.
Yeah. So this is I think 13 or 14.
This one goes to
Holy
11.
moly.
Barley wine has always got a thick, hazy, syrupy flavor
Heaviness.
to it. Yeah, heaviness. Right. So it definitely sits heavy in the gut.
Now, in your show, you'll be interested in these types of beers because these are barrel aged.
Yeah, so I want to basically have real conversations that don't come off as an interview with anything that spends time. I mean, I'm not rigid with my thing, but we're going to have Greg Duxakis on, which is a phenomenal. He represents Pierre Ferrand, which is cognac and plantation rum.
Right.
And,
I love plantation
and
rum.
Pasha Morchetti, who's one of my favorite human beings in Houston. He runs Rosewater down in Clear Lake. I'd like to have them on and have a discussion and introduce people outside the whiskey category to those other relatives of whiskey.
Amazing, yeah.
Those other barrel-aged
cousins,
spirits that
yeah.
are great, yeah. And if it's delicious and it touches a barrel, who doesn't love it?
So, speaking of the barrel age, that following the Glendronach, with the oak and the oak, they really, really complement
each other.
Yeah.
I might have to have a little more of that Glendronach
Yeah,
to
there's
see
plenty
what
here.
you are speaking of there, Mr. Ian
Cruze
Barry.
throws down the gauntlet and says,
Yeah.
prove it.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, come back for our final segment. In the final segment, we will be tasting another spirit, I believe, because you have another bottle here I think we haven't tried. And we'll be tasting this. Tell me again, because it's not real clear on the
Maple
label.
Shade.
Maple Shade.
It's by Parish Brewing. It's very dark.
I can see the maple leaf on the front of there, and Parish Brewing. Excited about this. That's coming up. Plus, the 9 types of craft beer drinkers that will drive you nuts. We'll share that with you when we come back at Smoking and Testing.
Believe it or not,
I see I have a bunch of friends watching. They need to go ahead and share this. You guys share this for me. Share
Come
it
on,
out there. Make
friends,
sure everybody gets it.
Share.
Also, it's good to see y'all.
Yeah, let me pee real quick.
Number 5 already.
Yep.
Segment 5 goes by fast. That Glendronach is something special there.
That Glendronach is fantastic. Honestly, it's just so good.
I have the 18, and I've been coveting it at the house, just keeping it as like special occasion stuff, and it's quite good as well.
Well, you need to just get that and bring it on over to the casa.
I can do that.
I have cigars and tequila.
I'm dropping off my wife and her brother to see the Lord show,
Ah, yes.
and I think that's Monday night, so I'm probably going to sit over at Reserve.
I wish I was around Monday night. I'd be joining you.
Because, I have this friend that lives close to there, but
Yeah.
he's
But
not going to be home.
He's not going to be home. He can't come out. He can't come out and play.
He can't come out and play.
Damn it. What fun, though, huh?
I'll have to call
I
Frank.
love Reserve 101.
I'll have to call Frank and see if he's out and about that night.
This old Numbskull is quite delicious. I
love old
Yeah,
Numbskull.
yeah,
Okay.
You poured me a generous glass.
Excellent. Okay, good.
Yeah, and I'm amazed
nice-
at how good it is for its price, especially considering
Yeah.
it's literally like a
it's not that
$6
expensive.
bottle.
Yeah, it's not that expensive.
And it's that good.
Can we mention the website and tickets and stuff?
Yes,
like that?
I want to make sure
Absolutely.
we come back to that. Yes. We're just having too much fun. That we're
Oh, it goes by
not
so
mentioning
fast
all
every
the
single
stuff
time.
that we need to. Ian, thank you for this.
Don't mention it ever.
Okay.
It gets me into beers and it gets
Ian?
me into my house.
Never mind. Yes. What a wonderful thing, huh?
Right. If you're gonna have one key,
Right.
one key.
You know, that's an interesting thing that you say that because when I was younger, I always thought about, when I get into like business and whatever, like I want to be that guy that's got like all those keys. It has keys to everything. And as I got older, I realized the important guys don't have all those keys. They have one key. That's all they need. That one key opens up what they need to get into, and that's all they need. They have people for all those other keys.
I never thought of it that way, but I do hate carrying around a whole bunch of keys.
It's like being the janitor at the high school.
Yeah.
Like, remember the janitor at the high school had that big ring of keys on his belt?
Ka-chink, ka-chink.
I mean, you could hear him clanking down the hall.
Hard to
I don't know
sneak
why
up
we're
some
talking
of
about this. All right, ready? Final segment,
We
Smoking
say
and
crazy
Toasting 80.
things.
You know what's awesome about these days on Smoking and Toasting? Like, we really don't have to worry if we run over a little on each segment.
Yes, true.
I think you guys run about
Awesome,
anything.
yeah.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
just kind of hang out.
Yep, it's awesome. We still try to keep the general...
Do you have a
Also, we get to hang out with Mr. Christopher Hart.
guys? I'm telling
No,
you,
we're going to smell this, the wax before we...
Yeah, all right.
But on the segment, so here we go.
yeah.
And here are some...
On the beach in Hawaii.
Welcome back. It is Smoking and Toasting. For some reason, we're playing like cup roulette. I don't know what that's about. Welcome back to Smoking and Toasting. It's always a fun show when we have Kris Hart on, and I want to thank you. And not just because you bring cool stuff, but we just love hanging out and discussing everything.
New
from,
Kids on the Block.
Yeah, New Kids on the Block to Great Spirits with you,
And
it's,
Backstreet
It's a lot of fun.
Boys. And
So I think you'll find this interesting, Chris. I have a great article. VinePair, VinePair. VinePair is a great website. Obviously, they do a lot of stuff about wine, as you might expect from their name. But they also do stuff about craft beer and spirits, and they're a really good. I recommend them highly. They're a good one to bookmark and check out from time to time. So they just posted an article recently that we've done things similar to this, but I thought this was really good, so I thought I would share it. The 9 types of craft beer drinkers who will drive you nuts.
okay,
And-
does it have my name on that list?
Yes, it's number 3, the Ian Berries. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a whole beer group in Houston
Damn
that
it.
needs to be on that list.
But I thought you might find some similarities in this with some of your bourbon buddies and some of your whiskey buddies. So
I guarantee you the vast majority of that bleeds over to whiskey.
this article says craft beer is revolutionary. The industry has created international movements and launched more than 6,000 breweries across the United States. But unfortunately, the success has enabled certain enthusiasts to take what is inarguably a wonderful thing and turn it into grounds on which to proselytize and ruin everyone else's good time. Here are some of the craft beer obsessives who might drive you to drink. Number 1, the Untapped addict. This is the beer geek who would rather have a sip of 4 limited releases than to take the time to actually enjoy one of them. Anyone who actually gets a dopamine release from all the Untapped badges, as if you deserve a reward for your flighty drinking habits. So have you been to one of these events, Ian, where people get like badges for the different stuff that they taste?
I know a lot of beer drinkers that act like that anyway.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's number 1.
They were, by the way, a lot of those beer drinkers that I know that were like that were quite alarmed when I told them, on my birthday party, I just took my bottle of Tactical Nuclear Penguin and split it between about 6 people just to try it.
What, dude? You can't. Oh, my God. Number 2, the Countdown King. Yes, there is an optimal time in which to consume all beers. And yes, freshness is important, particularly with certain styles. But if you're railing on someone who's trying to enjoy their 6-month-old IPA, you're missing the point.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Paris released their Ghost in the Machine. I think I don't know how often they do it, but there was a Ghost in the...
You brought that on the show that you and I
That
did
it
together.
froze? Yeah.
Well, Ian was
Froze it.
That was
That it
one of the
froze?
greatest beers I've ever tasted. That beer was amazing.
So that was their DDH, their double dry hopped Ghost, but their original Ghost release, they're like their standard Ghost release, if you can say that. It apparently has a shelf life of a week. So when I bought a case, I had a lot of drinking to do.
And you're not going to put it all down in a week.
No. So I got most of it down. I had family over. We helped each other out. But there were some that I had sitting in the shelf for a month.
Yeah.
Came back to it. It was fine.
Yes.
It's fine.
Exactly.
I understand it's not
Exactly.
optimum, but that's you're missing the point.
Well, I will just say that if you have a chance to access some more of that beer at a certain point in time, I will be
I got you covered.
I'll be rewarding you handsomely.
Well, the guy that helps me, there's two guys that help me, a local guy named John, and John, forgive me for butchering your last name, Buss or Buse, it's Busse, and another guy named David Roger. If you guys continue to show as much love as you have to me, I'll be sure to show the love.
It's a wonderful and amazing thing. Annoying craft beer drinker number 3, the shelfie hater. Craft beer is increasingly accessible, they say, and that's too bad because some people hate joy. So what it's talking about is people who don't like the fact that it's so much easier now to find good craft beer on the shelf than it used to be. Because they're not as special as they used to be.
Music falls into that category.
Totally,
so
Ian.
we've talked about that before.
I've
this
said
band is awesome. No one knows about them.
Yeah.
Oh, that same album that I thought was awesome 3 months ago is now on the radio. Yeah, they sold out.
Yeah, they sold out.
Come on.
Yeah.
There's people like that with movies.
Like what you like. It's okay.
I knew a guy who didn't like Avatar before he even tried it, before he even watched it. Because it was such a big hit.
Right.
That he refused to enjoy it. Yeah.
Automatically not like it.
Yeah. The next one is number 4, the line hater. Sometimes the journey is the destination. Other times you're missing the birth of your child because you stood on a Brooklyn sidewalk for 7 hours. To quote the good people of Paste, if you're a beer tourist who's paying a drug addict a pittance to stand in line overnight for you so you can sell a bottle of Imperial Stout on eBay, then you are officially the worst kind of beer geek there is.
So that's actually what's known as flipping, if I understand that correct.
Right.
Right.
And now, does this exist in the spirits world?
I would say pretty confidently, unless I'm missing something, that spirits are far more often flipped than beer.
Really? I think that's probably correct, yeah.
And there is a far more, I guess you could call it and this, I'm just making this up, I guess you could call it a bourbon secondary market of some sort, if that's what you would want to call it. It's a widely popular activity.
Okay.
And people get very furious, especially for instance,
This is like the ticket scalper, right?
Right,
That buys
yes.
a bunch of
Yes.
tickets.
What it's like. It's like a ticket scalper.
So you can't buy them, and then you have to buy them from a scalper.
but there's a lot of emotional investment in whiskey. So for instance, Al Young, who I guess did most of the barrel tastings at Four Roses for many years until they decided to give him a release of his own. And the Four Roses Al Young, people lined up outside the distillery overnight and took pictures with him signing their bottles, and then posted those pictures of him signing the bottles online for sale. And that bottle that was like $150 is now going for $600, $700 on these imaginary groups. So it pisses a lot of people off.
Which brings us to our next one, the relentless Instagrammer. Here's what the article says.
I'm guilty of that.
It says, hey, can I have a hashtag beer, hashtag beer geek, hashtag love beer, hashtag beer nerd, hashtag drink craft, hashtag do you have a charger I can use? So these guys write good articles. I like the way they do this and do the humor. The next one is the mansplainer. You work at a brewery and a home brew? That's cool. I've never tried brewing myself, but let me tell you why your last saison didn't work out.
I don't like the term mansplaining for many reasons.
Yes? Talk to me.
The down talker, the condescension, totally agree.
Yeah.
But mansplainer is just what you're saying is just it's a male person who's being condescending.
Right.
But that happens in the beer world. There's a girl locally that for many people that I know of, that she's quite condescending, but she's not mansplaining. She's just being condescending.
She's girl-splaining.
Yeah.
All right. That's fair enough. How about the self-proclaimed beer nerd who's never had anything but New England IPAs? This is the same person giving IPA. I talked about this earlier in the show. The same person giving IPAs low ratings on Untapped because they're, quote, bitter. Brah. IPAs are supposed to be bitter.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
The same way with sours. They taste like ketchup for the most part.
Then
not a sour fan.
Right.
Apparently not. I like sours.
I like some sour. We've had some good sours on the show. There is the one-upper. Says, you've tried Hitty Topper. Have you tried Focal Banger? I'm so over that, man. I just tried all my Alchemist for every trillium brewed in the last 5 seconds. Have you tried Treehouse's new DDH DIPA with lactose, oats, and baby tears? Me and my buddy waited 3 days for a sample pour. It's amazing. Yo, are you on Untapped? And finally, the indie or die drinker. Supporting independent brewers is fantastic, but no one invited your soapbox to the party. Even craft brewers enjoy a macro beer when the time is right. And so there you go. There's your 9 types of craft beer drinkers to drive you nuts.
They vastly overlap into the bourbon world. I mean, there's a lot of snootiness that happens.
Yes. Yeah. And you know, that's going to happen anytime you're dealing with products of this quality. It happens with automobiles.
Yes. So
happens with guitars, I bet, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Because you're
Absolutely.
a guitar aficionado.
So there's a local infamous individual who many
Infamous,
of you
I love this.
many of you may be able to know who I'm talking to, but the word tater is used quite a bit in regards to people who do that. They fall prey to those habits of snobbiness, or not just snobbiness, but they also fall prey to typical behavior of like people who jump on trends. And I told them, I said, you know, there's 2 types of taters or 2 types of those types of people, and and neither type likes to be called out. So there's going to be that air of arrogance in beer or whiskey. It's a common practice.
happens in cigars too.
Yes, it does.
Cigars
Although
a big one.
I did review a Black and Mild today.
Well, you were so
Successfully, by the way.
you-
Successfully. I wanna go buy
and
one.
Let me just say, you were so not a cigar snob. Like you have thrown your coolness down.
Okay, with all of this though, beer, whiskey, tequila, it doesn't matter. Drink it, enjoy it.
Right.
If you're not
Love-
actually drinking, like I don't care, like how rare that bottle is. If you don't drink it, what are you doing with it?
And if you don't enjoy it when you drink it, then it didn't matter.
Yeah,
how
it's like
rare it
collecting
was,
a
right?
car that you never drive.
Right.
There are
I
tons
say
of-
this about music all the time. Like what you like.
Yeah.
It's okay. That's
There-
the coolest thing you can do.
Well, you
if
mentioned-
you actually like the Backstreet Boys, own it. Like the Backstreet
Damn straight,
Boys,
brother.
you know?
I
Backstreet's
think
back
he
and
owned
they're
it.
in your heart.
So
Right.
yeah, like we
That
get that
zombie
in the
music video
guitar
from
world
2000?
all the
Yes,
time because people go out and buy incredibly expensive guitars and they can barely play. You know what? That's okay too.
Yes.
You know what? Own whatever you want to own,
Yes.
But you know what that is?
but
That's
don't be snobby about it.
That's
Yes.
the spectrum of when you finally get to the point in your life that you have a little bit of money, you want to collect.
Mm-hmm.
Then you get to a point where you have quite a bit more money, then you can collect and consume. You don't want to give up that
That's
bottle.
when it gets awesome.
You see what I'm saying? You don't want to give up the bottle unless it's a special occasion until you get to the
yeah.
point where you have so
Yeah.
much that you can enjoy whenever.
I will agree. When I first started drinking scotch, my one bottle that I would have would go pretty fast because it was the only scotch I had.
Right.
And so I decided when I had a decent paycheck, I went out and bought like 3 or 4 bottles. And then you get a little more conservative because you're like, well, I actually have something here. But then you try a little bit each, and they all go a little slower. And then you buy a couple more, and then you end up with a collection.
Then you're sitting on 500 bottles.
Yes. Then you
I don't have 500 bottles, but I will say that once you actually start a collection, it's easier to be more conservative with it.
Yes, that's absolutely true.
I see you smelling that wax.
I'm
How bad is
smelling
that?
the wax, and it's freaking awful. Like this is
that bad?
This is like it's very manure smelling.
Since we are in the realm of saying cuss words on this
Yes.
episode, it smells like cat shit.
Yes, it does. That's perfectly described. However,
It's awful.
I've been told, and what I'm smelling is the wax that is on the top of this bottle.
Let me see this.
Are you coming over here?
That smells horrific.
It
Yes.
smells like cat litter.
Yeah, it
I mean,
smells like cat
it's
litter.
it's awful.
This
but
is the wax that's on the top of this bottle that you brought.
Yep.
That is the maple leaf on it. That
Maple shade,
maple
right?
shade.
So you're not going to
Ugh.
be able to use your fingers on that. You're going to have to. There you go.
All right, so I've just popped the top on this.
Now the
bad boy.
beer itself is, and which by the way might be marketing genius
Right.
to make your initial profile right. So when you see a bottle,
Don't smell the bottle.
when you see a bottle, you're hit by expectations. Oh, that's a pretty bottle, nice packaging, it must be good. Then you smell the wax and you realize this is awful. I wasted my money. Like
Right, right.
terrible.
What the hell was I thinking?
They
Yeah.
lower your expectations briefly, and
Yes.
then you taste it.
All right. Well, I'm
Objectively, I might add.
I'm very excited to taste it because I have to say, as I'm pouring it into the glasses
Coffee.
here, I'm seeing that it has the consistency of Pennzoil, is what I'm thinking.
I was thinking coffee.
Okay.
It's a
It looks
little
like
sludgy.
it looks like a cold brew nitro coffee to me.
Cold
and it
brew
smells like
nitro coffee.
just that.
It smells exactly like that. You're right.
A cold brew nitro coffee.
I have a friend of mine who works for a company called Caffeine.
Okay,
And,
caffeine.
Caffeine. They do cold brew coffee.
Oh boy! Well, it is, certainly has got on the nose. It's all coffee.
So do exactly what I just did, and you will taste maple syrup for days. Just go.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Oh yeah, totally. That's that. By the way, that was number 10 on the things that the beer guys.
People who
do.
make
It's
noises
annoying.
when they drink.
Yeah, people who make noises when they
Wow.
drink.
I'm guilty.
Yeah, the retro
but boy-
ale on this
but
is
boy, that's
completely
good.
maple
Yeah.
syrup.
Completely.
Totally. It's like a maple syrup coffee.
As a matter of fact, the mouthfeel on this is just about maple syrup too.
It's thick and now here's the thing.
I could pour this on
This would
waffles.
be amazing on some pancakes.
This barley wine
Mm-hmm.
to me is more syrupy than this, and this is higher proof.
Now this is going to take me a minute to process.
It's a lot. It's rich.
I don't know. I
It's
think
rich.
this has a heavier mouthfeel than the barley
You
wine.
think so?
yeah, this
Yeah.
this feels more viscous.
For some reason, barley wines
I love
always
that
make me
word.
think of syrup. And although this quite literally tastes like syrup, to me
This
it's
quite
not.
literally tastes like
It
syrup.
quite literally
There's an
tastes like
irony in
pancake
that.
syrup. But
Could I pour this over vanilla ice cream? Because it sure seems like it would be wonderful.
I want to tell you something. Like, I would love to do this. Like, have some good pancakes and just roll them up and dip.
Okay, so I went to the restaurant Zochi downtown.
yeah,
My wife and I went there, and they are specialists in mole, right?
Mole is delicious.
Mole. So one of the appetizers you can get there is a mole sampler, and they bring you out. And we had the waiter. We said, "You just pick them. Like, pick us 4 really good moles." So he brought out. So it's a little bowls with 4 moles, and they bring you tortillas, and you dip the tortillas in the mole and eat them. And that's kind of what I think I would like to do with this.
with that,
Yes.
I would like
dip
to
something
dip
in it.
tortillas in it and eat it.
So objectively, and here's the thing: I didn't make it, so be honest. Do you like it?
I love it.
I do.
Yeah, I love it. Now,
It's delicious. Like, so, like, sometimes when we talk about, like, how thick and syrupy it is and all this other stuff, these are actually pluses, not minuses.
right, it's
These
not
are- this is
necessarily a
good.
bad thing.
They're
It's
descriptors.
delicious.
That's all they
this,
are.
This,
Descriptors.
however, is, like, if you don't like maple syrup, you don't want this beer.
Right, exactly. It's kind of
'Cause
like
it
if
is.
you don't like earthy, chocolatey aromas, there are some cigars you should stay away from.
Right.
You know, I'm gonna take a little sip of this, and then I'm
And
gonna go
compare it.
back to the old Numbskull. Just since we're over the time of the show anyway, why not? Huh?
Yeah. Speaking of which, time of the show, barrel aged beer, Houston Whiskey Social.
Houston Whiskey Social.
So-
when is that?
Just to recap, July 28th. It's a Saturday.
Can we get tickets now?
You guys already have tickets. Yes. So
Okay, but I'm
tickets
talking
are on
about people
Eventbrite,
who are
right?
listening. Yeah, Eventbrite.
So Eventbrite tickets are on sale. You can also find them at Houston Whiskey Society. Let's try that again.
Okay.
HoustonWhiskeySocial.com.
HoustonWhiskeySocial.com.
I'm
and there's
mixing up our
but there's
bourbon website.
only 1,000 tickets available.
Yeah.
right?
So, and I know that seems like a lot, but last year we
no,
sold
it's
out.
not. Trust me.
Last year we sold out of the event more than a week in advance, and this year we moved to a much larger venue, and we're going to push the envelope to 350. I want to hit 350
Easily.
different whiskeys.
Easily the most enjoyable whiskey event I've ever been to. Easily.
It was so well set up.
uh-huh.
Like, it was so
the
amazing.
visuals, the way everything was laid out, the friendliness of the
You know
whiskey
what?
guys.
I remember we commented after this too, because a lot of times you go to those events and what you end up with is someone who's hired from a serving company,
Right.
Uh-huh.
That or a catering company that just comes out and they're like here, and they're here, and that's what you get 90% of the time at a lot of these places. At your place, like the people were knowledgeable.
Yeah. So
Right.
at
It
our
wasn't
event,
it wasn't just a girl in a pretty outfit hired to stand there and go, "Here, try our whiskey."
Which is not entirely bad.
There's nothing
but
wrong with
still,
that, but
it's
yes.
better to talk whiskey.
yeah, our event is large. I have a really great working relationship with Frank Krockenberger, as you guys have met.
Frank
from
is great.
Beam, Haley
Yeah.
De La
Frank is
Rosa.
great.
I know Frank.
Carrie from Heaven Hill. I mean, there's just these people are the actual brand representatives for Houston. They're not just some poor person. And
Right,
I don't
right,
mean
right.
poor person. I mean poor person.
Pouring,
Pouring
P-O-U-R.
person. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's we have a great and they're in the Houston
Remember
Bourbon
when
Society.
Kris Hart came on the show and he was like talking trash about poor people? Remember that?
and Backstreet Boys.
And Backstreet Boys.
So Houston
Chris,
WhiskeySocial.com.
HoustonWhiskeySocial.com. Tickets are going to go fast. I'm telling you. Because
Yeah, so the
it
first-
sold out last year.
The first
Early.
day, the first 24 hours, we sold 250 tickets. So they're going to move pretty quick.
And the date of the event is
July 28th. It's a Saturday.
Awesome. I'll be back. It's
We
great.
moved it to a Saturday, and we've actually got a few things lined up for some earlier tastings privately that'll go up soon. But it's I can't use the word unlimited legally, but I will say that there is, as long as you are sober, there's something for you to try.
There'll be plenty of stuff to try. Yes.
And correct, including our own barrel selection. We just recently did a Knob Creek barrel that was
That Knob Creek barrel selection.
Real
from
quick
last
before
year.
the show's over, tell us about what you're doing with Southern Star.
Okay, so as soon as I leave here, in fact, my wife is downstairs.
Okay.
I will be heading to Southern Star in Conroe. We have our last 3 barrel selections we did, 2 1792 barrels and a Russell's Reserve barrel. We will be taking these barrels up north, aging a barrel-aged stout, or aging a stout in the barrel.
And in Conroe at Southern Star.
At Southern Star for 6 months.
Love Southern Star.
These will be released at the retail level. We have stores that will carry the product, and a couple of bars and restaurants will carry the kegs of it. But we will have a Houston Bourbon Society barrel-aged stout through Southern Star, and we're excited.
So
about it.
awesome. They're so good. And we actually just reviewed their
Coconut
Black
and
Crack.
vanilla, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes, we just reviewed the
we
crack,
just
which
reviewed
was
the
wonderful.
Black Crack on here. It was so good.
So good. So, well, Chris,
Super
it is
excited about that.
always a pleasure to have you on the show. And I just wanted to mention before we go that the maple, say it again, the maple
Shade.
maple shade,
Maple Shade.
to go back and forth. And can we find this maple shade in local stores, or is this a very limited thing?
That's Parish.
Yeah,
Brewing.
so it's only
Parish,
it's
right?
only available at the distillery, and
Okay.
they've already had the release and they sold all of it. So
I
it's
will
not
tell
available.
you in my best beer snob way. Sorry, yeah, you can't get this. But this is wonderful going back and forth with this
The
and
difference
the old
in
Numbskull.
profiles
The difference
is-
in the profile and the way they complement each other. And that's one of the things that we have really enjoyed lately is how beer and spirits can complement each other. In this case, it's 2 different beers complementing each other, and it's a wonderful thing.
I'm
And
happy.
plus, you have 2 beers.
And
Yeah.
plus, I'm holding 2 beers. Look, I'm two-fisted. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Guys, I
Chris,
can't,
you rock.
I can't say it enough, man. I always have such a fun time on the show.
Well,
you guys are great. I
We
appreciate
are
it.
looking forward to being on your show and having a fun time on that as well.
Absolutely.
And we'll try to bring some goodies that are as interesting as the goodies you bring.
I'm excited. You guys are allowed to bring beer.
Consider it done. We want to thank you guys for helping us get to 80 episodes in a couple weeks.
80 episodes.
Yes. In a couple of weeks, we will be live from Los Angeles. We are scouting for locations now, and we're really excited because we want to come to you from someplace in LA where we can smoke and enjoy some local brews and maybe some local spirits. And we really want to establish Smoking and Toasting in the state of California.
Well,
So we're
yeah,
excited.
and like I said earlier, is it shouldn't be too hard to find a place to smoke cigars in California because you simply can't smoke inside, and you're not allowed to smoke outside.
So we
You're
have,
not allowed to smoke outside?
No,
In
lots of
California, you can't smoke a
places.
cigar while
lot
you're
of
walking.
places you can't
For
smoke
real,
outside.
you can't smoke
yes.
outside.
That's absurd.
Yeah,
That's
it is.
absurd.
It is. California and New York are the 2 most unfriendly states to cigar smokers in the union, and we'll get more into that in future episodes.
but
of the
we're going to
show.
work this out. And
Yes.
wait a second, this means you're going to fly me out to L.A.
We're going to go to L.A. You and me, my friend. It's going to be awesome. You and me and Adam on the
This
wheels
is
of
the
steel.
toughest
Yes.
job ever.
It is. It's going to be a tough one. So we want to thank you again, Chris, for being on the show and for helping. You have been a big supporter of this show from the very, very early days, and we appreciate it very much.
One more time.
Thank you, my
Absolutely,
friend.
guys.
Yes.
Thanks so
Absolutely.
much, guys.
And to everyone who's enjoyed any of the shows we've done, as we got to number 80, we salute you. Cheers,
Cheers,
Lanche.
my friend. Have a wonderful week.
Blue Solo Cup.
Blue Solo Cup.
Well,
Don't ever stop doing that, by the way. Don't ever stop doing it.
I know, it's so good, isn't it?
It's really good. It's really good. It's a great.
It's like the old Johnny Carson. Here's Johnny kind of thing. It's like
I've been thinking about how to
yeah.
open my show, and I don't have anything like that. It's glorious.
I said this a couple of weeks ago. I did steal it from somebody, but I've always said this in my career in radio. I always said, if you steal from me, you've stolen twice.
Hey, thanks
Yeah.
everybody on Facebook for watching.
Woohoo! Facebook Live, you guys.
Heather,
rock.
Alex,
Absolutely.
Michael, I see you guys. Yep. Gene,
Gene Beck, the
Gene
savage,
Beck.
savage that is Gene
You know,
Beck.
I've only met him a couple times, but he is an entertaining individual.
Everyone says that. They're liars, but everyone says that.